sky's not blue.
You need to understand that when the time comes, I'm going to be taking over.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I'm your host, the Scholar of Spite and the Saturday Night Delight, Roger Riddell. Joining me today, she's the vocalist and guitarist for Chicago noise rock band Djunah. Her leg is also the band's bassist. She is Donna Diane. How are you doing today, Donna?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. Femina Furens is probably one of my favorite albums that I've heard, this entire year so far.
That's amazing. I love hearing that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out where to start because there's so many different places. But I guess my introduction to you all was last October when you all opened for Kin Mode over at I think it was Beat Kitchen.
Yes, that was a great show. That's awesome that you saw us there.
Yeah. No, I remember the energy of your performance, just I was like, this is really fucking good, and I don't even know the best way to describe it. It's just it was like a piercing energy, and it was what you want out of a noise rock band.
Nice, yeah. I get very intense on stage. I don't know
Yeah.
what happens really. It's not intentional necessarily. It's just there's a lot of emotion in the music, so it just kind of clicks in when we start.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that's always kind of stood out to me on both Femina Furens and Ex Voto is the amount of I guess sort of symbolism and iconography that goes into things. Even with the video that you all did for the Seven Winds of Sekhmet, the Sekhmet's the Egyptian goddess of war and healing, which is an interesting duality in and of itself. But I don't know, it's just everything just kind of comes together in this really interesting way, and there's always a lot to digest to it.
Yeah, I tend to just because the music is so personally meaningful for me, and it's so much about identity and really, self-exploration and stuff like that. There's always a lot of layers to it and stuff I don't necessarily even understand until after, some of it was just until after the album was made, it really didn't coalesce for me. But that's kind of the beauty and the fun of making music and making art, because you don't really even know what it means fully until it helps you reveal yourself to you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I think about every now and then is just the whole artistic process of it's not always necessarily what you're consciously trying to do, but you look at it later on and you're like, oh, this I did this thing this way because of this thing that happened to me, or this thing that I was feeling at the time, and I wasn't really thinking about it, but this is how it panned out.
Yeah, I mean, so much of writing music for me is really trying to get my conscious thinking, logical brain out of the way, because that's useful for editing stage and getting shit done. But really, making meaning, making stuff that's powerful, that's emotional, it's that brain can really interfere with that. So it's get that out of the way, really embrace the stuff that's maybe confusing or contradictory or ambiguous. To me, that's where the magic really lies, and that's the kind of stuff that interests me. So it's always trying to cultivate that, trying to court that, you know, and really put away the part of my brain that wants to immediately know exactly what it's about and like what I'm trying to achieve and everything like that. You know, that's for other other processes in life, but not music.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially with the process of writing lyrics, like sometimes you just have to like embrace the idea that like no sense makes sense to it, because like you can't approach it the same way as something like, say, long form writing where there's a lot more context. It's like you just have to count on people to connect the dots and like understand what you're getting at.
Right. And it's, you know, it's always amazing to me because it's like some songs where it's like about something specific. You know, people will be like, oh, you know, Lopsided is one song that I get a lot of people having like a really big connection to. And for me, it's like, it's about such a specific moment, but I love that so many people can connect to it with their own things. Cause I'm like, no one could have like that specific memory, but it's like, you know, more of a universal thing that like, if I had been too specific about it, then I don't think people would have connected to it in that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's like, I mean, that's another one of the things of like the beauty of art is that, you know, you have like your own reason that you made it or your own like meaning to it, but everyone else that experiences that art after you put it out into the world kind of just like transfers like elements of themselves onto it and how they digest it.
yes, and I love that. It's almost like that's how the album is fully completed, is like getting to tour and talk to people and really hear how they're connecting to it, because it's like, you know, I do really believe like albums are, they are participatory. Like you're making like a thing that goes out into the world, but like the meaning that is constructed from that, that's like a, it's a group effort. The artist doesn't do it by themselves. Like the audience really completes the album by how it gets interpreted. And you know, that's, it's just such a fascinating process to me. It's like I view it as an artist and a fan at the same time.
So I mentioned at the start that your leg is also the bassist for the band. So
Yes.
how did that sort of come about? Because I know you've got like a foot switch that you use and that you've built foot switches. And how did you just kind of like end up on the path where you were doing that? And like, how much more difficult is it to sing and play guitar and then also have your leg, you know, effectively playing bass?
Well, I always say this is something that evolved over time because a lot of people are like, why would anybody choose to do that? So it really was just kind of this natural evolution of like I started playing solo and doing this thing where I'm playing this bass organ with my foot while I'm playing guitar and singing, and that was really how Djunah started. And then I like, it seemed viable, so that's when I got a drummer involved and then kind of like made it official. So it just it then it kind of became this like fun challenge of like, how do you make a two-piece sound like a three or more piece while still doing everything live. I kind of like weird challenges like that because it's like I was saying, that part of my brain that wants to analyze everything, that really gives it like a way to like problem solve, you know, and just be like, okay, I want to, you know, accomplish this kind of thing. How do I, you know, use my gear to make it happen? I don't know. I love weird challenges like that. And it's fun too. I think when people come to the shows, I mean, you don't necessarily have to know that I'm doing it, but I think it's a really fun realization that people have when they're watching it and they're like, wait a minute. It's like, is she play, playing the bass at the same time? So I just, as a music fan, I love stuff like that. When you go see a band, and you're like, this is cool, and then you're like, wait a minute, like what is that guy doing? You know, it just kind of puts it over the top.
Yeah, because like I know in, for example, Something Is Waiting, like they went from like a 5-piece down to a 3-piece, and Bill has, some different things that he does to trigger like the bass and different things, so they sound a lot thicker than they actually are.
Yeah, I mean, with technology, there's like so many ways to like skin the cat now that it's just like it's so much fun talking to other people and like how they found their way to do it. And I mean, honestly, in this day and age, like a lot of people, well, I'll get the reaction where it's like, why don't you just get a bass player? Like, why? But honestly, in this day and age, like having a lot of people in your band, like it makes touring really difficult. I mean, touring is expensive. It can be hard for bands to make ends meet. So definitely being streamlined as a 2-piece, makes things pretty efficient from that realm. I mean, we're able to do an insane amount of tour dates this year. I still kind of can't believe how much we're doing, but Jared and I fit into a minivan with all of our gear, so it makes it like touring super easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've been thinking about like the whole like touring thing too, because like everyone that I talk to that's been touring, things cost more now than they did before. But like even without that, it's like over the last decade or so, maybe like even more than the last decade, um, bands have just kind of been like, for lack of a better term, just like kind of taking it from both ends on touring, because like now the venues want to charge you for like selling merch there in some cases, and then
Absolutely.
you get screwed on like ticket fees and things like that in some cases now. So
Yeah, it's definitely, and because it's the music industry, it's always changing minute by minute. So it definitely helps, like, being agile, like being able to, get places quickly and efficiently and stuff like that. Having just uh, Jared and me kind of like all hands on deck. We do everything ourselves, and to me it's also enjoyable because it's like I'm very much like a DIY person. Like I've never, you know, waited around for like a music industry thing. I'm just like figure out a way to do it, problem solve, make it happen. And fortunately it's, especially this year, it's really worked out well for us. So I'm really grateful about that, because yeah, it's, especially talking with other bands, it can be really tough to get on the road and make it happen.
yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been working for y'all, because I kind of like get the sense that y'all are building like a pretty good following.
Yeah, I mean, social media has definitely helped me with that, like reach a lot of people. Cause like this album was like a self-release, and I was, when you're self-releasing stuff, you never quite know what's gonna happen with it. And so it was awesome to get like that kind of reception. Bandcamp really helped. Like just kind of like Instagram, Bandcamp, YouTube, stuff like that, just using whatever I can to reach people. That's been awesome, because another thing that's like, if you wait around for like record labels and PR and like all the traditional stuff, like that can really slow you down. And there's also unknowns with that stuff too. So
Yeah.
it was definitely cool to be able to like just be like, all right, we're just doing it. And like really really find an audience for this album.
Yeah, I mean, so back on the DIY thing, how did you get started on like building foot switches? Because I mean that it kind of jumped out at me too whenever I, first read that.
Yeah, it was funny because when the pandemic first started, Kurt Ballou, who recorded actually both of our albums, he does a lot of like DIY. He sells DIY PCBs, like the circuit boards, to build your own pedals. So I was talking. I had recorded an episode of like a web series I had briefly called "Can I Touch Your Gear?" with him, and he had shown me he talked a lot about the PCBs and the different pedals that you could build. So he was like, "You should do one. You should like get into pedal building." And I was kind of like, I had done like some soldering in high school because like I was interested in electronics, but then just never really did anything with it. So I kind of just built one of his pedals and then was like, actually, this is really important because I need to actually build specific stuff for the rig that I'm doing. So like I built kind of like this passive expression switcher for my rig, which has been a lifesaver, and I've just kind of been evolving that design to do like different, kind of dial it in and make it do exactly what I want it to do. So stuff like that is so much fun because it really like, it's just something new to learn, but also allows me to just kind of like go deeper with gear. I love gear.
Yeah.
It's like an endless thing you could learn about.
Yeah, and you mentioned "Can I Touch Your Gear?" and I was gonna ask, is that something that you might, start up again at some point?
I want to. I've had so many false starts with restarting it, but like it's gonna happen eventually. But I had to finally just table it when we finally released the album, and with all the touring, I was like, it's not gonna happen this year anymore. But I want to so badly. I really love that show, and I love the idea behind it. It's just, for me, it's a matter of time and then also resources, but it's gonna happen. I just keep saying it's gonna happen to try to will it into existence, but I want it to.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kurt Ballou. I know that he's produced your albums. How did you get linked up with him initially? Like, I know that Converge plays Chicago a lot, but like, how did you get that connection going?
Yeah, honestly, Nick Smolkowski, the original drummer in Djunah, he and I were just kind of, when we had we're ready to record, we were just kind of like kicking around like, who's your ideal to record with? And he brought up Kurt, and then I was like, that is such a good idea. Like it just kind of like gelled in my brain because it's not that we're like super outside of what Kurt does, but we're not like totally like dead center, the kind of stuff. But he actually does like a pretty wide variety of recordings. So I just thought it would be like a cool pairing, and yeah, it ended up working out. It was cool because I like hit him up and he was like, if you could get into the studio, he had like a cancellation. So he's like, if you can get into the studio this specific week. And I was like, we will make it happen. So yeah, it was cool that we were able to like squeeze in the first album. And then this new album, we were able to like have more time in the studio. So like, you can really hear it like on like, it just sounds like a little more fuller. The like production is more there on it, just because we had more time, fewer songs to address on it.
Yeah, and, tell me about the writing process for Femina Furens. I know that that translates from Latin to furious woman, and it's, I don't know if I would say it's a running theme throughout the album, but like there are connections to, like, for example, I mentioned Seven Winds of Sekhmet, and like Sekhmet being the goddess of war and healing. But like, how much of an overall like theme did you have in the album? Just kind of with all of that.
It actually, so the pandemic happened like a couple months after we released the first album, and then I was kind of like, well, I got to get started writing the next one, I guess, because all our tour dates got wiped out. And shortly thereafter, I actually got diagnosed with a trauma disorder called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. And I went into like a 2-month intensive trauma therapy program. This like completely caught me by surprise because I was just like, I was just convinced I did not have a trauma disorder. I was like, why are they diagnosing me with this? And over the course of the program, I learned so much about trauma, childhood trauma, and really came to embrace the diagnosis and learn about it. And so like one of the things that I learned is there's kind of 5 dimensions of trauma disorders that they teach you. They call it like 5 themes that are like that people with trauma disorders usually struggle with, and they're like safety, intimacy, power and control. I'm like blanking on the other ones right now. I always do this during interviews. But like I was like bored that I like put all of my ideas on. So I basically kind of organized the songs and the poems that I had been working on under those themes. And that was kind of, so the album kind of took shape around that. It was like I had already had these poems that I've been working on and songs that I've been working on, and then kind of the diagnosis really helps reveal what was going on with it. And like, you know, a lot of trauma therapy was working through my anger. So and also the like secondary emotions around that anger, especially judgments about women who are angry, women who express rage, you know, and the kind of like, what do I want to say, like internalized misogyny over that, of like feeling like I shouldn't be angry, or, you know, like women are often taught to be sad instead of angry, you know, or men are often taught to be angry instead of sad. And just really, really kind of like taking those like gendered beliefs head on. Cause I didn't think I thought any of that stuff, but I really came to learn like a lot of the beliefs that I had internalized. So the album is really me coming to terms with that anger and expressing it in a way that feels really, I guess, like beautiful and powerful, and also just like honest with it. Sorry, that was a really big answer to that
Yeah,
question.
no, it's kind of I guess like interesting the way that trauma like plays out in different ways with different people too, because like for example, like I have like OCD kind of stuff from like trauma in the past, so it's like
Sure.
it's it plays out in like these different ways that like I guess we all kind of figure out ways to manage it. And you know, for a lot of people it does end up being like creativity and like figuring out how to um express those sorts of things, you know, whether it be through like music or visual art or, you know, just anything like that, just finding outlets for it.
Totally. Yeah, it's so much stuff in my life started making sense after they were kind of explaining this stuff to me, because even with like trauma disorders, it's like the like sound vibrations from my amplifier, I realized like in like viscerally in my body how that is actually like a way of like grounding myself or soothing myself out of a trauma response. So it really illuminated, yeah, why I'm attracted to certain forms of music, you know, why I do certain activities. Because sometimes it's like some people like they've known their whole life what they're diagnosed with, and some people it's like you were saying, you just find like workarounds or stuff, but you don't really know why you do it, or like you have a feeling something's wrong with you, but you don't really know what it is. And you know, so this it was like to me such a gift to finally like know what it was and understand why I always like felt weird or different, you know, but I couldn't really like say what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned the like internalized misogyny of like the idea that, you know, men express things as, you know, being angry instead of being sad, and women are told to be sad instead of being angry. And that just kind of made me think of like I was reading the other day about this concept of like the divine feminine, and how like um modern, I guess, sort of like religious structures are centered around like one male being, or like a trinity of male, entities or whatever. Whereas a lot of ancient societies worship both gods and goddesses. So there were women being worshipped as well as men.
Yes, and that was the figure of Sekhmet was such like a powerful symbol for me because she was actually one of the most worshipped and feared goddesses of ancient Egypt. So that, I mean, she was the ass kicker out of all all of the gods and goddesses. So to me, it's just like that's such a powerful thing to know that, like, you know, in our past, like we used to worship women too. Like that's a very human thing that we've lost. And I think, no matter what your gender identity is, we're all the poorer for not embracing women and those like conventional like feminine qualities, and this idea of like I think that's what people really say when they're talking about the divine feminine. I mean, that's something that like we can all worship and we can all embrace and we can all incorporate into our lives. I mean, like basically, like all the men I know, it's like they don't want to be divorced from their feelings. They want to be in touch with their feelings, but like society has so bludgeoned them and beaten their feelings out of them that they like it can be hard to do that. And to the same extent, same thing for women too. A lot of women are divorced from their feelings also. And I just think like for me it's just such a symbol of like getting back in touch with what is like primal to us, what is core to us, is just those like very basic human experiences of emotion. Like we can't all be robots in this society. We live around a lot of technology, but like we don't want to be robots. We want to be people.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Sekhmet I think is interesting too because the fact that Sekhmet is a goddess of war just goes to show that like ancient societies didn't just have, female deities being, representative of like fertility or things like that. They were also representative of war, and there were male deities that were like representative of things like fertility and things like that too. It was a much more robust like picture of what humanity is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just reveals that like the stuff that we have today that is not useful was constructed to create power differentials and not to benefit society in any any way. There's nothing inherent or natural about it. Like any argument that it's like, patriarchy is like natural or innate, or it's just that argument is DOA. It just there's so much contradictory evidence throughout history that it's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, and tell me about the making of the music video for Seven Winds of Sekhmet. I know there's like a metal bikini that you wear in that you like handmade, which the fact that you handmade it is just like impressive to me because it's so like intricately designed that it looks like it was made by like a studio or something. I mean, the whole video in and of itself looks like it's um like a vastly like more expensive production than it probably really was, even though I'm also not saying that it was probably cheap either, but it's like you
Yeah.
know
Honestly, all the credit to Dave Rentauskas who directed it. He's done basically all of our Djunah videos, I think. I went to him with the idea and I was like, could we do like green screen stuff? And this was his first like really like big green screen production, but he's like, I've always wanted to do something like this. Like, let's make it happen. And oh my god, it was it was so much work. Like he and I were like keying like for like a month straight. Like it was, like in my mind, I'm like, oh, green screening. You just go on a computer and like click the green, and then it disappears and everything. It's like, oh my god, it's so much more involved than that. But it's one of those things where like I'm a person that once I set my mind to something and I'm like, okay, we're doing this, I will not stop. I will not stop until it is done and good and to my liking. So like with it's the same thing with the like breastplate and everything that I made. It was like I didn't really know what I was doing when I said like I've never made jewelry before. I've never made anything like that. But I was just kind of like watching some stuff on YouTube, kind of like buying materials, making it up as I went along. And then I was just like, it took me like 2 months, I would say, to finally finish everything. And, but I was just like, yeah, once I started, I'm like, I have to finish this. I have to finish it and I'm going to figure out how to make it look good. And it was the same thing with the video. Like, I'm so proud of that video because it's like all the props and everything are real. It's all practical effects. I don't think there was any. The green screening was obviously done on computer, but there was nothing else that was computer generated with it. It was all, the whole pregnancy thing and like the shit that I'm eating, everything that was all real. So I love that kind of stuff where it's like, okay, I have this like fantastical idea. How do I make it a reality? Like, how do I actually like physically make this stuff? So I probably would not green screen again because that was like a ton of work, but I would love to have a second career as like a Hollywood props special effects person because I feel like I would be really good at it.
Yeah, no, and like the stuff that you were eating, like how bad did that actually taste? Because it kind of, when
Oh
I
my
saw it, I was
god.
just like, it took me back to college when I had like this fake blood one Halloween,
Oh
and
god.
it tasted like there was just like plastic coating the inside of my mouth.
It wasn't plasticky because it was real gelatin, but it was like unflavored gelatin, so it had this kind of like horsey smell to it. It just smelled like kind of like sweaty balls. So yeah, that was another thing like I would not do again. But I'm glad I did it. I didn't actually like real puke, but I did like spit out a lot of it. Because I hate Jello anyway. Like it's just I don't know. Jello is just like I don't understand why people eat it. But I tried to flavor it, but it was messing up. It was becoming too cloudy. So I was like, I gotta go raw dog. I gotta eat it on flavor.
I feel like Jello is one of those things that you have to either be like a little kid or like an old person to
Yeah.
really enjoy.
Yeah, it's just wrong on so many levels. It's like mayo. It's
It's
like,
just like congealed sugary water.
yeah, it makes no sense. But I survived, so that's the important thing.
Yeah, tell me about the tour that you have coming up. I know the first run of dates that you have, Lung is going to be on there, and
Yes. Well, we're super excited about that. We're doing like kind of like a long weekend with them where we both were playing this It Takes Two Fest. It's all two-piece bands in Savannah. That's the first date is on September 9th. And then we're doing a couple dates with them in North Carolina. We're going on to do some East Coast stuff. We're playing Desert Fest in New York on September 16th. And then in October, we're headed back out west to do a bunch of dates. We're going back down to Texas to play No Coast Fest at the end of October, and then also Levitation. So that's cool because we haven't really done like the festival circuit, anything like that. So this will be our first couple fests, really. So that should be fun.
yeah, I actually went to college at the University of Louisville with Daisy from Lung
Oh,
back in the day.
you're kidding! Oh
No,
my
yeah,
god!
it was maybe about like a year or two before he moved to Cincinnati and joined Foxy Shazam.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's amazing. Yeah, Daisy's great. Lung is incredible. They are such an incredible band, and it's so much fun to like finally get to like do at least a mini tour with them. I'd like to do a longer run with them, but it wasn't in the cards this time. But yeah, they're awesome. Those 3 dates we're gonna do together, they're gonna be a very special thing.
Yeah, you mentioned Desert Fest. Out on that, like when it comes to playing festivals, do you like have a preference between playing festivals and playing just like, a standard show, like, on a tour?
I don't know. They're kind of like different things. I do like I like playing outside, but I don't think we get to do that on any of these ones. We had a really good time. We played Caterwall Fest 2 years in a row up in Minneapolis. It's a big noise rock festival. That one's always a good time. So I don't know, like festivals are fun because it kind of like changes it up. But I love a good standard show too. I like variety is what I like. I don't want to play like, the same type of venue over and over again. Like it's boring. I like we're very fortunate because we've been playing like a total variety of places, like DIY spots, big venues, all over the place. And I love places that are like unique, have a lot of character. You know, I just like a good variety.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I've thought about before when it comes to like once a band hits the like level where they're playing kind of like mid-sized venues and they're just kind of on like that Live Nation circuit where it's just the nonstop House of Blues and Fillmores.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, so you got this same venue in every city, like
Right. It's like the McDonald's venues or whatever.
yeah.
It's just like kind of a bummer. So we're not that to that level yet, so we don't have those kind of problems. But yeah, it's like it is cool when you can just play like cool spots, like the kind of spots that you would like to go to a show to, that have like a lot of character. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, because I mean, like I was just at like the Empty Bottle last night, and for the Something Is Waiting release show, and
Yeah.
that bar I love because there's just so much fucking character in there, and then like it's a different experience from like Beat Kitchen, but they're both great venues.
Yeah. Bottle is like that will always be our favorite in Chicago just because they've been around for so long. It's like some of my first shows I saw there in the city, and it's such a joy to play there. So that's always gonna have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, and back in I think it was February, I was at the release show for Femina Furens there, and you closed the set with a sword.
Yes. the It's funny, when we did the release show for Ex Voto, I have like a pair of hedge clippers that like in my previous band I had done this like a couple times where I just kind of finished off the set by like sawing my guitar strings with like a giant pair of hedge clippers and then hacking them off. And it was like at the time I did it because we were a new band, so we only had one album, and I was so terrified that people were going to ask for an encore. And we wouldn't have any songs. So I was like, well, if I hack off all my guitar strings, no one can ask for an encore. So then it was funny because then when I started playing with Jared, like he only knew the songs off the new album. He's since learned more off the older album. But again, I was like, oh my God, like what if we get into this thing? Like he only knew a limited number of songs. So I'm like, what if we get into this thing where people ask for an encore? So I'm like, I have that photo that we have on a t-shirt of me holding a sword. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing, but with a sword this time. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun to do. I was kind of then worried that I had created another problem that we were going to go on tour and people were going to be like, where's the sword? Because I only did it in Chicago. But fortunately, not very many people asked about the sword. Me creating more problems for myself. But yeah, every now and again I like to do something like crazy like that, like for a record release show. It's fun. for me. I hope it's fun for people to watch too.
Yeah, no, I loved seeing it. I was the one thing that I kept thinking of throughout the whole thing was like, that's not fully sharpened sword, is it? And
No.
then yeah, because like I'm just like the logistics of it being a sharpened, like an actual sharpened sword, I was just kind of like, it can't be sharpened.
No. And for anybody that's wondering, because I've gotten like people be like, you shouldn't wreck guitars like that. I did not wreck the guitar. It's right here. It's perfectly fine. It's all theater. No instruments were destroyed. But yeah, I don't know. There's some very precious people out there on Instagram who are like, you're being wasteful and destroying guitars. I'm like, I only destroy guitar strings, not guitars.
Yeah, no, it's the strings. You can replace those in like
Yeah.
5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. They're only a couple bucks. Everyone will live. No one will be hurt. It's another part of performance art for me of like, there's just certain, not to stereotype, but certain men out there who hate watching women destroy things. They cannot handle it. So I like riling those people up.
Yeah, no, it's all the more reason to destroy things. Like
I know. I'm
yeah.
like, all you're doing is making me want to actually destroy a guitar. Maybe I'll get to that point. We'll see.
Like I don't know, I feel like, if I were in the same situation, I would feel like I would just want to go out of my way to find a new thing to destroy like
Yeah.
every show.
I know. I'm like, because part of me enjoys doing it. I like literally just physically love doing something. I was like, if come on, like anybody, if you have an opportunity to get on stage with a sword and like saw a guitar with it, like who wouldn't do that? Like I want to know what that sounds like. I want to know what that feels like. So part of me does like doing that stuff. If I get a crazy idea, I'll probably do it. But then I'm also don't want to be stereotyped as the person who's like constantly like play guitar. I don't know. Maybe I do want to be stereotyped as that. We'll see.
Yeah, it's like destruction, I feel, can be its own like kind of art in a way too, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's like kind of what we were talking about the whole theme of Sekhmet and this idea of destruction and healing. That's sort of like a lot of this like divine feminine concept of like it is destruction so that like new growth can take place, so that healing can take place, like destroying old outdated models, bringing in new healthier ones, kind of thing. So it's just like I love that idea of creative destruction, the destruction that brings new ideas, new possibilities into view. I'm really
Yeah,
getting
no. Sometimes if
philosophical now.
something isn't working, you just have to kind of like burn it to the ground and, start fresh.
Absolutely. It's like don't be too precious about any one thing. That's always the thing that I have to like disabuse myself of is like getting too attached to one idea, getting, too attached to a certain outcome, and really just kind of like taking a step back and like knowing my place and knowing that like it's so much better when you let things you just kind of like clear away and let things kind of like naturally grow and evolve and then really respond to that. It makes for such better art, like art that is forced, art that is like meant to like imitate or like reproduce or whatever. It's just never as good.
Yeah, no, just like this whole idea that like everything has to be a certain way to be like true, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think that's like always the interesting thing about metal to me is like sometimes there's such orthodoxy about like this is the way it's done, you have to do it this way. And then it's so cool when people come in and just completely destroy everything you knew about something and do something completely new. And then that becomes the new orthodoxy and then everyone has to do that. But That's just fascinating about it.
Yeah. No, it's one of the things that always kind of it's a thing that cracks me up about Metallica to an extent, because like they're so big that they can try new things if they feel like it, and they don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it like affecting them long term, but their fans just get so upset about it. And it's like, I don't know, even if whatever it is that they're trying to do different doesn't really work for me, I'm just like, at least they're still trying new things and trying to explore their creativity.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that are like about anything, but it's like that's part of being an artist. I mean, it's just like, being an artist versus being a jukebox. It's just like, would you really want to make people just like for the rest of their life keep regurgitating the same? They're people. They want to do something. They want to try something different. They want to, and just as we are all human, we fail.
Yeah.
Sometimes we fail spectacularly, but that's beautiful too.
Yeah, no, like people just get really attached to like the idea of things as opposed to, what things actually are. And it goes from like art to um time periods to things that they enjoy to like even other people where they get stuck in a thing that's not working anymore with someone, but they're stuck there because they're attached to the idea of who that person is and like not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and some people just hate change. They just
Yeah.
don't. It makes them feel unsafe. They don't trust it. It just ruins their world. And it's like I get it, but at the same time, it's for me. I'm like a big change person. I like variety. I don't I feel like I'm in a rut if pretty quickly if stuff starts to get competitive or repetitive. I have to, like change it up, do something different, find some new weird way to like challenge myself because it's just like I get bored easily. So I do things like play bass with my feet or like crazy stuff like that. Because I mean, like music can be as boring or as exciting as you want it to be. If you just want to do the same old thing over and over again, you could do that. You could be successful. And if you want to make it super complicated and outrageous and whatever, you can do that too.
Yeah. There's a Trent Reznor interview from like a decade or so ago that I think of every now and then, where he was talking about how people complain when he comes out with a new album if it doesn't sound like the Downward Spiral or the Fragile. And he's just like, those albums were like about very specific times in my life, and if I was still trying to make albums about that time in my life at this time in my life, it wouldn't be true to where I'm at now. And he went on to talk about like a lot of bands from his era at that point were like paying other people to make them sound like they used to sound because their fans wanted, like, there's some people that want like the AC/DC thing where it's just they make the same album 16 times in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like in the end, like what's meaningful about that, Is that especially with somebody like Trent Reznor, where it's just like it's more as opposed to like an AC/DC or something, and that's more about meaning, that's more about feeling, that's more about experience. So it's just like, yeah, how can you ask an artist like that to then just regurgitate the same stuff? Like it won't mean anything. Like
Yeah.
like those albums are great because they meant something, because they were urgent and they needed to be made at that time. It's like you can make something that sounds like a facsimile of that, but it will be void of meaning. So what point is what's the point of that? There is no point.
Yeah,
And
there's no joy in like sober middle-aged dad Trent Reznor cosplaying as Mr. Self-Destruct.
right. Yeah. Nobody needs to see that. And I think it's also this like kind of like messed up way that we view musicians and celebrities and artists, is this idea that like somebody blows up and makes this like great piece of art. So it's like, well, then they are a great artist. So every album that they make has to be equally great because they are a great artist. And I think we just don't have like a normal conception of art, is that like, you know, we're all great artists in the sense of like we're all capable of making that, you know, great work. Some people make several of them in their lifetime, but it's like how art moves is like right place, right time with art, you know. It's just like something is great not just because of the person who made it, but because of the context that it was in, the audience that was there, you know. And so this expectation that it's like this singular person made this thing and then now should be capable of reproducing it is just like such a simplistic version of how art is made, you know. And like we just want it to be like manufactured and not have a normal human conception of like how it's made. I really like representing that because especially as somebody who like manages a mental illness while doing this, it's really important to like make art that fits in with your life, you know. The minute this is like interfering with my mental health, it gets put away. Like my health and my life are most important, and the art is just an expression of that, you know. And I think a lot of people get an upside down conception of that, where it's just like, oh, this artist had this mental illness and then they like made this great work and then that like I guess like alleviated their pain or something. I think people think that that's what's going to happen to them is like, you know, oh, if I just make this one great thing then I'm gonna, you know, the world's gonna be perfect and everything. It's like that is not how it works. It is the inverse. You know, you have to take care of yourself and then the art will come. You know, we have to have like a human centered view of it and not like a manufacturing view of it.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of people, as opposed to everything just becoming like sunshine and lollipops, you know, if their art gets really well known, they really just kind of get even weirder.
Yeah, I mean it is stressful and it's something that like I have to be very like I didn't know that we were going to be doing this like huge tour schedule. I have to be very conscientious about managing my disorder and like making sure that I am good in a good spot to be on the road and everything, you know, making sure that I am like managing my stress and everything like that. Because yeah, if you just like let it all go and then just like assume that it's all going to work out, it's not. I mean, obviously we know there's some tragic endings for people in those situations. So I'm so big on like preaching about mental health, artists taking care of themselves, and everybody like at any level of what you're doing, like whatever art you want to create, make sure you are in a mentally healthy spot. Don't be exploiting your mental illness to make art and put yourself in an unhealthy place. Don't do that.
Yeah, yeah, no, like that stuff, you know, if you don't manage it well, it just kind of like creeps up on you too. Like, you know, I've had times where I'll just kind of like have this realization out of nowhere. I'm just like, oh, I've been depressed for like 2 or 3 weeks and like not talking to anyone really, and just kind of like going about a routine or whatever. And then I have to like kind of figure out how to manage things back to like normal, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, it could be really hard, especially now that it's just like we do so much online and it's so easy not to leave the house
Yeah.
and everything. I mean, you have to just be so conscientious of that and really making sure like you have your health checklist and that you're like doing all the stuff that you need to do because yeah, it can be really easy to let that go and just be like, oh, I'm left the house for a week. I mean, because we were doing that during the pandemic, you know, and it just like kind of became a thing that you can fall into sometimes.
Yeah, we had like a year or two of just like that being normalized. It
Yeah,
was like no place was open.
yeah, yeah. It was just like, well, let's go for another walk around the neighborhood. Like, remember that? So yeah, it can be. That's. I mean, that's one thing that I have to focus on too. It's just, everybody has to, is just making sure you're getting out, seeing your friends, going out, seeing shows, like just getting out of the house and doing something that does like a world for your mental health,
Yeah. Yeah, so your next tour wraps up here in Chicago on I think November 3rd.
Yes, November 3rd, Sleeping Village. I'm so looking forward to it. We're kind of like bookending our tour because we started off the year at Empty Bottle in Chicago, and then we're going to end it at Sleeping Village. So it'll be a nice homecoming show.
That's another cool venue that's got like an interesting character, because like that whole front area kind of feels like a lodge, and then you go in the back and it's just like a normal music venue.
Yeah, it's like a legit venue. Yeah, they're great. I love Sleeping Village. They're so kind to the artists there. They're really nice. It's a great room. So that's another top spot in Chicago that I like playing.
Yeah. Well, I've had you for about an hour now. Is there anything else that you want to put out there?
Not really. Just come see us. We're gonna be like all over the country, and even in Toronto too. So definitely come see us. You won't regret it.
And thanks so much for taking the time today, Donna.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Run you, mama, run you, mama, run